Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes, to renting versus selling, and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live. 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders. Welcome to 2023, and today we are going to talk about divorce law. It's a crappy situation, and it happens so often. I don't even know what the numbers are, but I heard that, like, what is it, like your first marriage is like 50% divorce, your second marriage is like 90%, I don't know. We're gonna let Scott Levine, our family lawyer, tell us all about that. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Laura, for having me. And you are correct, it can be an unpleasant thing, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, it can be bringing in a new chapter in one's life. I mean, people do drift apart, things change.
But if they cheat, I don't know. I mean, it kind of is nasty.
Well, you know, that can happen too. But, and I guess as it relates to what you do, the most significant asset in most people's divorce, you know, the average middle class divorce, is going to be the marital residence. And there are different ways that it can be handled or addressed in the context of a divorce. And you know, we can address some of those things, but my practice is we're in Fort Lauderdale, East Fort Lauderdale. The phone number is 954-587-2244. Again, that's 954-587-2244, and we are on the web at Levine. That's Levine, familylaw.com. So
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, I'm always available.
Okay, well, let's start with some questions now so we can give them some food for thought to think about, well, what happens when, you know, first people get blindsided, right?
Well, a divorce is going to be initiated. It's not going to happen in secret. It's going to
Sometimes.
very unusual, and that is where a spouse may disappear and they cannot be found, and that would be through publication. But in this instance, where they own real property, that's not going to be the blindsiding divorce, and there's really no situation.
You're saying the divorce is already in process.
Yes. So what will happen is, and let's just assume it's a standard South Florida middle-class couple, they're going to own, and maybe even own mortgage-free, their primary residence, their marital home. Presumptively, that is going to be a marital asset that's subject to distribution, and we call that equitable distribution. Now, one party may buy the other person out, buy their interest out. So I'll give you an example. Let's say they acquired during the marriage a house, and that house is worth $400,000. And there's a small mortgage, $100,000. The equity is roughly $300,000. So that means they both have a 50% interest in the net equity. So one may decide, okay, I'll buy the other person out if they have funds or they can qualify for a loan.
Which let's go back to that. Let's not forget to talk about qualifying for a loan, getting one partner off the loan,
Exactly.
what their options are,
So
and what should definitely be
there,
done.
There are a couple of things. If one of the spouses is keeping the house, we typically, and it's amazing how many attorneys screw this up, you've got to get that mortgage loan. And remember, the mortgage is the security instrument. People will refer to, I have to pay the mortgage. No, you pay the loan. The mortgage is just the document that secures the loan.
Which both people could be on it, but only one person qualified for the loan.
So let's assume they're both on the promissory note.
Let's just assume the wife qualified, right? Let's just
Okay.
change it around.
So
It's always the husband, right?
let's do it where they're jointly on the loan.
Okay.
So spouse A wants to buy out the interest of spouse B. We determined it's about $150,000, plus there's an existing mortgage loan. So spouse B, who wants to buy out A, think that's what I said,
We'll just pretend it is.
needs to come up not only with $150,000,
Right.
but they're going to have to qualify for a loan to either refinance that $100,000 mortgage and or somehow maybe borrow money from a family member to pay it off, because we don't want spouse A still tethered to that mortgage loan when spouse A
Which means
relinquishes
they have
their-
to either go to the bank and ask them, which I have never, just so you know, I have never seen the bank ever been willing to pull one spouse off
They
the loan.
will not. Banks, let's
Yeah.
let's make sure
so
we
it's going
understand
to be a
one thing.
refinance situation. And with today's rates, if they bought this house at 3% interest, and now today they're going to have to refinance at 6.5, that's going to be something very contentious there.
So let's make sure we understand a couple of things. People will write in a marital settlement agreement that the person who's buying out the other person's interest, they have to make the mortgage payment timely, they have to pay, and they are solely responsible for it. Do you know what the bank's going to say? We don't give a hoot. You both sign the damn promissory note. We will look to both of you in the event of a default or non-payment. We don't care about your agreement. It means nothing to us. We have a contract with both spouse A and spouse B.
Right.
So that's why we always want to make sure, particularly if you're representing the person who's selling their interest, to make sure that loan gets paid off. And you have to have a consequence in the marital settlement agreement. I have seen this happen, and I have seen what we would call high-end lawyers miss this one. If you sign a marital settlement agreement and it requires that other spouse to refinance that loan, recast that loan, and recasting is basically maybe you pay a lump sum, you pay it way down, and you recast the terms, or perhaps even get it modified, whatever. Again, bank doesn't have to play ball.
Right.
But I have seen marital settlement agreements by people who would claim that they are very qualified lawyers that don't discuss what happens if the other person doesn't pay that loan off, the person who's buying out the interest.
Right. It says you need to do it, but it doesn't give you a time frame.
And if it doesn't give you a time frame, if it doesn't have the court reserving enforcement, and I will explain that,
Yeah.
then you know what happens? The court's going to say, there's nothing we can do.
And meanwhile, your credit's getting
I mean, you
torn
could
apart.
sue that person.
Yeah, but
sure, but
you-
good luck.
Okay,
with that.
so you're going to sue them. That's
So-
going to cost you
so
a lot of money.
What do you
your
do
credit's
in
getting
that?
torn
So
apart during this process.
We build language into the marital settlement agreement that there is consequences, and I'm not going to tell everybody the language we use because this is not the time.
No,
You
and
know,
they're
this
not paying for
yes,
it, right?
But
you can call Scott.
we build things in there to make sure there's enforcement. So a lot of people will do marital settlement agreements between themselves. They'll go to Office Depot. They'll get a form. It's stupid. You know, because there's so many things you can miss. And we're just talking about the marital
It's one
revenue.
thing when you have no assets to go to Home Depot for a form, right?
If you have no assets, do yourselves a favor. If you both make, not much, and you have no assets, and no children, you can probably work this out yourselves.
Right.
But if you have assets, particularly a marital resident, and other assets, there's retirement accounts, there's brokerage accounts. There may be a retirement account that you had before you got married. So there may be a portion of that that's non-marital.
Well, I had a lady today, actually, she called me, right? And she says to me, oh, I'm calling you because my lawyer told me don't call her every day, call me once a week. Because, and I said to her, I said, yeah, I go, you speak for, she's like, it's only 3 minutes. I go, so you're getting charged for 15 minutes of probably $400. I said, that 3 minutes was $100 that you don't have. So she's asking me questions and I'm like, listen, she's like, well, I'm supposed to get all the money from, I said, it just needs to be in writing. And as long as it's in writing, we can provide that to the title company and we get all the funds, but it has to be in the divorce decree.
Yes, when you are dealing with, if a house is going to be sold, if someone's going to buy out the other side's interest, and there's going to be at some point a closing, because if there's a refinance loan, there may be a closing. We need to have these things spelled out, particularly if there's refinancing, believe it or not, even though it's the same house that you've lived in, it's the same house you've lived in, but you're refinancing the existing mortgage, what is the new mortgage loan company going to require? Title insurance. What is the title insurance people are going to want to see? They want to see the marital settlement agreement. And if it was your typical Office Depot marital settlement agreement, you're going to have problems with loan commitments.
I actually just used something like that. I had a client that did it with her husband, and I looked at this and I said, I'm like, is this going to work? And it worked. I was like, this is crazy.
It depends on the title examiner. I mean, but why take a chance?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
why,
it worked.
Why take a chance? Because.
And I was looking at it and I was going, the assets that were put out, I was like, you have more assets than this. I'm like, somebody, like.
So maybe we'll talk about equitable distribution. It's called equitable distribution. It's not called mechanically, mathematically precise.
No, but
50,
when you do
50.
that Office Depot, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's asking you each to disclose your assets.
Yes.
When you don't disclose your assets, I mean, you're opening yourself up to some other problems.
Absolutely.
Just like when you're in the middle of a divorce, right? You should be, everything should be status quo and continue to do whatever you're doing. But what I've seen sometimes is a husband or a wife who have always been, let's either splitting the mortgage or one always pays the mortgage, walks away and says, you know what, you deal with it, you pay for it. And it's like, I don't think the judge is gonna like that when they come back and they say, so you've been for the last 4 years paying this mortgage, and now you've walked away because you're pissed off for whatever reason, and you're not paying. So you shouldn't be going out buying new cars, bigger, or so, if you need a car and your lease is up, okay, but you can't go from a Honda to a Tesla.
And we do see that. So what I say is, in Palm Beach County, I believe, and in Broward County, we have what's called a status quo order that is served with the initial petition. It has to be circulated. And it says things like, don't change, we have to tell people, do not cancel your wife on your health insurance. Do not take your children off your health insurance. And believe it or not, the wives do it to husbands. They'll take them off the health insurance. Do not, in essence, change your financial position. In essence, as you said, significant acquisitions. And that's just on the financial side. Do not take people off of accounts,
Or life insurance policies.
Yes, do not cancel life insurance policies. Do not, and it's just, if people take the emotion and the anger out of the process, it becomes, in essence, much like when you prepare your taxes, it becomes a process that it does take its time, but if you take the emotion and the anger out and you know that this is going to happen, why make it a misery? Because a couple of things are going to happen. One is you will end up paying more money in legal fees.
Of course.
You may end up paying the other side's legal fees.
You know, how does that work?
All right,
I'm just curious, because I've seen people go to divorce, and is it the person that makes more money?
No.
Is it the person?
So,
because it's like, okay, so in Florida, if you cheat, that's okay.
That has nothing to do with attorney's fees.
So how do you determine
So there's
that?
two methods. There's two places that attorney's fees occur in a divorce. Okay. And let's do one that's easy to understand. Someone has been, and we'll say the husband has been a stay-at-home father. It happens now. Maybe it didn't happen when I was a kid, but now it happens.
Would you have wanted that? No, I'm just kidding.
If my father stayed at home, I would have jumped off a bridge. So, but mother is an anesthesiologist.
Okay.
So clearly, mother has the superior financial position. So under Florida statute, husband would have a need for attorney's fees, and mother
but that's what I said.
Would have the ability to pay. So sometimes, but it is not always makes more money, because even though someone may make more money, it may be a negligible amount, and the other person still may have the ability to pay their attorney's fees. So it's a need and ability. So it's a need analysis. First, you have to demonstrate that you have a need for fees.
Okay.
And then you have to demonstrate that the other person has the ability. So that's the standard attorney fee exposure issue that I will deal with. Now, I'll warn the person who makes more money, if I am representing them, I say, look, you need to understand, you probably want to go fast.
'Cause it's possible.
It's not only possible, depending on the difference in financial position, you in essence are subsidizing your spouse's litigation. So the more litigious you are, you're in essence
Creating more bills,
paying
yeah.
for double lawyers. It's not a good use of money when you think about it.
Right.
So be smart when you get a divorce. That's take the emotion out of it.
I'm
be
like wondering, should we
smart.
pre-plan? I mean,
Yeah, well, you
like-
can. That's called a prenuptial agreement.
Oh.
That's it. And
But-
you could do postnuptial.
But that could be post-nuptial agreement. Like,
That's people after they get married, believe it or not, do postnuptial agreement.
and how does that work? Because I thought if you do a prenup like a few days before the wedding, it could be considered to be null and void because you put them under distress.
Well,
distress.
we'll talk about that. But
Okay.
let me get
I don't know
back
if we'll
to
have enough time for that. You might have to come back again.
I would be happy to come
Okay.
back. But let's get back to the issue of the attorney's fees. The guy who's-
Everybody's getting divorced. I mean,
the
you're
guy
like the
who's
perfect
being-
for everybody.
or the woman.
More people need you than need realtors, I think, these days.
Yeah, but then they're going to need realtors because it's going to be a house.
So
and
remember, call me.
So back to the issue. So that you have that need and ability to pay attorney's fees, but then you behaved badly.
What do you mean by behave
You
badly?
were a scoundrel. You hid assets that had to be discovered. You didn't disclose your mandate. You did not, in essence, you tried to flout the discovery process. You didn't cooperate. So there are sanctions, and those are what I call punishment fees. And the court doesn't give a damn if you have the ability to pay. They can say, you, sir, flouted the discovery. You hid assets. You didn't cooperate. Don't tell me you can't pay. Boom.
Now,
Here's
what
the-
happens if the wife makes allegations or the husband makes allegations that one or the other is abusing the children or the spouse? And later the kids are like, you have 2 out of 3 kids, because kids can be at a young age coerced into telling you. Because
absolutely.
if you don't say that daddy, does this, or if mommy does this, then you're never going to see me again. So if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen.
Unfortunately,
and I've seen this.
It does happen. It is terrible.
So if somewhere it comes out where 2 kids are like, nah, we're just joking, like, because then they're realizing, like, this really, somebody actually gets, because they get to therapy and it's not true.
If there's significant allegations, I mean, if there are allegations
and
of
they're fake,
abuse,
yeah.
and so the court has some things it can do. It can appoint a social investigator. I don't really want to get into that. It can appoint a guardian ad litem. There will be an investigation. The liars will get found out. Folks, don't do that. Just listen to me. Do not do that, because you want to talk about a world of hell. If you have manipulated your child to make improper allegations against the other parent and you are discovered, you are looking at very severe draconian restrictions on your time sharing. You may be subject to supervised time sharing. That means you only see your kid with a court-appointed supervisor. Can you imagine that?
But what if, like, listen, when we're young, right, we do what our parents ask us to do because they scare you into thinking that if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So what if the divorce happens, the one parent's found out of abuse and blah, 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 and then later on all the kids come back and be like, listen, we realized that our mom or our dad put us to do this, and we realized this really never happened.
So there's a lot of...
Does it ever go backwards?
It can, because if the allegations that were made resulted in restrictions on some parents' time sharing, and that's really a terrible thing should that happen. And there are judges that...
Yeah, then you fast forward, the relationships are damaged, and now the kids are realizing...
So what...
I think that comes... I mean,
what
I have a background in therapy. I know that this is...
So what can a judge do if that gets pointed out?
And you're talking 10 years down the line.
Well, that's a pretty extraordinary circumstance, and I have not particularly seen that.
Well, that's good.
But what a judge can do in a situation where there's parental alienation, and that is that parental alienation is not as common as people say it is, but we know it when we encounter it. And when I have seen bona fide cases of parental alienation. And the judge will order reunification therapy. It can be very costly, and the parent that did the alienating can end up paying for that. There are just certain things you should never do in a divorce. And let's just be upfront. Do not put your children in the middle of this divorce. Do not speak ill of your spouse.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
these are just basic things. And
I just know that it can get very, you've got so many things going on. You've got real estate that you need to talk about, which we were talking about,
And let's be candid. Parents go through a divorce. Father says, your mother, she's driving me crazy. That's not parental alienation. That's just...
Your father says that when...
Yes, they say that when you're together.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Your mother with the okay.
Yeah. That's normal.
Just try to be careful.
Yeah.
Look, it's stressful. Being a parent today is stressful. It's not like when I was a kid. When I was a kid during the summer, I left the house at 9:30 in the morning.
Yep.
I didn't come home till 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. My mother had no idea where I was.
No, because we didn't have pagers. We didn't have cell phones.
And
we did go to the payphone up on the street, right?
If you could find it,
you could always find a payphone back in the day.
Yeah,
now.
but
Yeah.
and it was just a different time. Now parenting is it's a different thing.
You know what? It's stressful just to know that your kids are out there, and But anyway, let's hold that thought. We're going to go to commercial, and we will be right back to talk more about the fun-loving part of divorce.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
At Title Brothers LLC, our mission is to give you the best closing experience anywhere in the country. Founded in 2020 by Adam Lohman and Josh Wiseman, here at Title Brothers, we're your one-stop shop for residential real estate, title insurance, title and escrow services, real estate closing, and due diligence services. While primarily located in South Florida, we also host dozens of closings throughout the state and even electronically as requested. To contact the Title Brothers, call us at 954-995-4988 or visit our website and get a quick quote today.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at theloracell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi, and welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We are having the pleasant conversation of divorce. So, probably wondering, making money with Laura, how does that tie into divorce? Well, you know what? You want to keep your money when you get divorced, don't you? So I want to help you keep some of your money and want to make sure that you hire the right person when it comes down to that. So, welcome back, Scott. Yes. We don't have much time, so we're going to have to...
And that's a valid point. A lot of people will try to represent themselves, and that can cost you money. That can cost you grief.
Don't the judges say, what do they say? A fool should never...
If you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client.
Yeah.
So, again, back to the issue of the house. That's the significant asset. We want to make sure that that's dealt with fairly, and and there's things like portability of the tax.
I know, and it's funny. I was one of the first people to bring that up to people. They never thought about it, and I said, I'd be sitting there with a client, and they're like, "Well, we got divorced," and
it doesn't come up very often. Most lawyers don't address it.
Yeah, so I just thought, that's definitely interesting. So what is a good number? I know you mentioned it before. Let's do it again. If you are thinking about getting divorced, you're just kind of curious about the information, or you're getting married. And you need a prenup.
So yes,
Scott can help you.
There's prenups, there's postnups, and believe it or not, there's a concept called divorce planning. You can plan for a divorce. That's not a terrible thing.
Isn't that kind of like a prenup? But we don't have time to talk about it. But you're making me think of more things I got to figure out about.
It's just things that you can do to prepare yourself.
Well-
It's like preparing an estate plan, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't just, you keep it to
Right.
yourself. So the phone number is 954-587-2244, 954-587-2244, and we're always around.
And if you are getting divorced and you need to sell that house and you want top dollar, or it's just not in the condition it needs to be, and if you don't have the money to put it in the condition it needs to be, I'm willing to help you with that, and you can reimburse me back at closing. So give me a call, 954-650-0827. I am Laura Sanders with Making Money with Laura Sanders. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you next week.